Good morning and hello. Welcome to today's episode of Understanding Mental Health Through the Whole Person. Welcome and thank you for joining this episode. Today, we are exploring an important topic for clients, families, professionals, and community members: how biology, life experiences, and social conditions all shape mental health. This conversation is especially relevant in social work because effective care requires us to look beyond symptoms and understand the whole person. In this class, we are learning that mental health is not caused by one factor alone. Genetics, brain chemistry, and physical health, trauma, poverty, social isolation, and access to support all interact. A biopsychosocial perspective helps us understand these connections and respond with care that is practical, respectful, and person centered. In segment one, we talk about what biology tells us about mental health. Let's begin with the side of mental health. Biology includes factors such as genetics, brain structure, neurotransmitters, hormones, chronic illness, sleep, nutrition, and the body stress response. These factors do not determine a person's future, but they can influence vulnerability, resilience, and treatment needs. For example, a client with a family history of depression may have an increased risk of experiencing depression themselves. But it is important to say this clearly: genes are not the destiny. A person's environment, relationship, coping skills, access to care, and community support can all influence whether that risk becomes a lived challenge. Chronic physical illness is another biological factor that can affect mental health. Conditions such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, chronic pain, and other long-term health concerns can increase stress, limit daily activities, and contribute to anxiety or depression. At the same time, mental health conditions can make it harder for people to manage physical health. That is why social workers should consider both body and mind during assessment and treatment planning. So now let us look to the social determinants of mental health. These are the conditions in which people live, work, learn, and build relationships. Poverty, housing, instability, food insecurity, unemployment, discrimination, neighborhood safety, access to healthcare, and transportation all affect mental well-being. When families are under constant financial stress, mental health is often impacted long before a diagnosis is made, which is why counselors and social workers should intentionally talk about these social conditions in practice. Social isolation is another major concern. Human beings are wired for connection. Supportive relationships can protect mental health, while loneliness and disconnection can increase the risk of depression, anxiety, and distress. This is why community programs, peer support, family engagement, faith communities, neighborhood organizations, and culturally responsive services can be powerful parts of prevention and recovery. Now, let's look at trauma and adverse childhood experiences that also shape mental health across the lifespan. Experiences such as abuse, neglect, domestic violence, community violence, or repeated instability can affect emotional regulations, trust, safety, and even brain development. A trauma-informed approach reminds us to ask, what happened to this person, rather than what is wrong with this person. That shift in language changes the tone of care and supports resilience focused treatment. Now, let's understand the brain, stress, and behavior. Understanding the brain can also reduce stigma. The amygdala, sometimes described as the brain's alarm system, helps detect the threat. When someone has experienced trauma or prolonged stress, this alarm system can become highly sensitive. A client may seem reactive, guarded, or overwhelmed, but from a trauma informed lens, those responses may reflect a nervous system trying to stay safe. Okay, the prefrontal cortex is another important brain region. It supports planning, decision making, impulse control, and emotional regulation. During a crisis, trauma reminders, or intense stress, this part of the brain may not function as effectively. That helps explain why someone may have difficulty thinking clearly, following through, or making decisions when overwhelmed. Compassionate practice recognizes that behavior often communicates distress and biological adaptation to trauma. Now, neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine also play a role. Serotonin is connected to mood, sleep, appetite, and emotional balance. Dopamine is connected to motivation, reward, and pleasure. When these systems are disrupted, people may experience symptoms that affect their daily functioning. For social workers, this knowledge supports collaboration with medical and behavioral health providers, especially when clients are receiving medication or integrated care. Now, let's bring everything back into practice, or together in practice. On a treatment approach, one treatment approach that reflects the integrated understanding is trauma informed cognitive behavior therapy with mind body strategies. This approach combines practical tools for identifying thoughts and behaviors with education about trauma, the nervous system, grounding skills, breathing techniques, and emotional regulation. It recognizes that healing involves the mind, the body, relationships, safety, environment, and an understanding of how psychological trauma influences mental illnesses and treatment needs. In practice, this might mean helping a client understand why their body reacts strongly to reminders of past trauma while also building coping skills and strengthening their support network. It may also involve intentionally discussing social determinants such as housing, healthcare access, transportation, food security, and culturally relevant community resources as part of a treatment plan. The goal is not only symptom reduction, the goal is stability, dignity, connection, and long term well being. As I close today's episode, the key message in this is this: mental health must be understood through the whole person. Biology matters, biology matters, social conditions matter, trauma matters, relationships matter, community matters. When workers use a biopsychosocial lens, they are better prepared to access needs, reduce stigma, advocate effectively, and provide care that honors each client's full story. Now, I want to thank you for listening. Whether you are a student, a practitioner, a client, family member, or a community partner, I hope this discussion encouraged you to view mental health with compassion, curiosity, and a commitment to holistic support. This has been my social work podcast episode on the biological and psychological determinants of mental health. Thank you.